This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your host, Radio Joe Hughes, and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day wherever you're listening from, and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. This week is episode number 511, and we welcome Chuck Violand, Ross Riek, Owen Boak, and the restoration industry's global watchdog, Pete Consigli. We also hope to have on the roundup Lee King, RIA President, and Chris Munchak, RIA Executive Director. Please visit our Facebook and YouTube pages and leave a comment, like it, or subscribe. You can also sign up for the weekly show announcement at iaqradio.com, and you can download our podcast through podbean.com or iTunes. And don't forget, we have continuing education credits available. Just send me an email at joe.hughes@iaqtraining.com.
IAQ Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com. Gold sponsors are Particles Plus Engineers and Manufacturers of feature-rich particle counters and air quality monitoring instrumentation. Learn more at particlesplus.com. Count on us. Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions available at healthyindoors.com. And AEML Laboratories, free FedEx shipping, great pricing, same-day results, and never a rush fee. Learn more at AEMLinc.com. Association sponsors are the Indoor Air Quality Association, a multidisciplinary organization dedicated to promoting the exchange of indoor environmental information through education and research. Learn more at IAQA.org. And RIA, the Restoration Industry Association, the granddaddy of the restoration industry. Network with leaders. Learn more at restorationindustry.org.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man with this week's IAQ Radio Trivia question.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations, Victor Cafaro in Richmond, Virginia, for being first to identify Caspar, Balthazar, and Melchior as the names of the three Magi wise men who, according to tradition, visited Jesus. The IQ Radio Trivia question for today, July 20, 2018, has been sponsored by Ideas, the solution chemistry company, creating unique solutions to odor removal, surface cleaning, and decontamination problems. Here is today's trivia question. Who designed the Sydney Opera House? Back to you, Joe.
Okay, so I'm going to do quick bios on all of our guests. Chuck Violand is the president and CEO of Violand Management Associates. He's also past president and multi-year member of the board of directors of the Restoration Industry Association. Ross Riek is immediate past chairperson of the RIA Australasian Council, chairperson of the Australasian Conference Organizing Committee, an 18-plus year owner and operator of Carpet Care Services, carpet floor coverings, and complete care restoration based in Sydney, Australia. Owen Boak. Owen is the founder and managing director of Elements Specialty Cleaning and Restoration in Melbourne, Australia. He chaired the planning committee for RIA's inaugural Australasian Annual Restoration Conference and Trade Show in June of 2018. Owen is RIA's Australasian Council Chair. Pete Consigli. Pete is the restoration industry's global watchdog and a frequent contributor to IAQ Radio. He's been an RIA member since 1977. Over the years, he's been an active volunteer and filled various association leadership roles. Pete is widely recognized as RIA's resident historian and an archival resource to the industry. And then we'll have Lee King, the current RIA president, and Chris Munchak, the current executive director, joining us for the roundup. Cliff, I'm going to turn it over to you for the questions.
Thanks, Joe. Well, first question's going to go out to Chuck. Chuck, traditionally, RIA presidents have a short list of things that they want to accomplish during their terms. As RIA's immediate past president, what were the key issues you wanted to accomplish, and how did you fare in accomplishing?
That's a great question, Cliff. I guess that, a couple things. First of all, we have a strategic plan that we're working from. And so when I became president, which we drafted in 2014, when I became president, there were 3 initiatives that I wanted to get involved in alignment with that strategic plan. And those 3 initiatives were making RIA an international association. And that has as much to do with our mindset as it does with members in other countries. The second one was to enrich the benefits that RIA members receive as being a member, to the point where when somebody says, why should I even join the association? We don't flinch when it comes to answering that question. And then the third one was to build a deep bench of industry leaders. This was an unusual time in the history, in my opinion, in the history of RIA, where we're transitioning generations and generations of leaders within the industry. I felt that it was important to get actively involved in doing that. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. The second part was, as I understood it, what kind of progress did we make? And while none of them were intended to be completed within my presidency, I feel that we've made some significant steps in achieving them. There's still lots of work left to do. With respect to becoming an international association, I'm thrilled that we now have a council position and an Australasian council. That was big. But we're not done. I mean, we're continuing to move in that direction. The second one had to do with member benefits. And there is an enormous amount of work, far more work than I ever expected as an outsider that takes place, but a tremendous amount of work with respect to education within the association. And Mark Springer is heading up an awful lot of that. And there's huge progress there. And then the third one was transitioning to a different generation, bringing that next group of leaders into the association. And YPRC was launched, and there is just a real base of strong young leaders that will carry RIA into the future.
What's YRPC stand for?
Young Professional, YPRC, Young Professional Restoration Contractors.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. All right, Ross, how old is RIA's Australasian Council, and what exactly does it do?
Yeah, so hi guys from Australia. Great to be online. Hope
Good to have you, Race.
Yeah, love to see you all sometime. Look, we started back in on the 20th of October 2015, where our founding chairperson Duncan Bennett, who a lot of you would know over many years travelling to the States, really wanted to kick things off here in Australia. We've had many members in Australia for over 25 years and had people moving around the world, learning and being a part of RIA's family. So the idea was to originally support our local members here in Australia. So on the 20th of October, we in 2015, we had a conference here, our first RIA conference. It was only small. We were happy to have Chuck here. He became very famous here quickly with his thongs. And for those who don't know what thongs are, we call them thongs. They're actually called sandals. And when we first said, "Oh, nice thong, Chuck," we got a few funny looks from Chuck right at the offset. That was quite funny. And so over that time, we slowly developed with the goal to turn our local region and support network into an RIA council. And we worked very hard to do that through many initiatives over that period of time. And then in finally 2017, we actually turned our council, our organising committee into or steering committee into a council. And the good thing with that, we still have all the same members on board right from the onset. So to answer that question, we've been around here a long time, but the steering committee kicked off in 2015. So we've come a long way since then.
Okay, thank you. Owen, you've traveled to the United States and you've been in business in Australia for quite some time. What similarities and or differences do you see in the Australasian and North American markets for both restoration and indoor air quality?
A lot of the, I say that there's a great deal of similarity in relation to how we go about solving our problems here, and a great deal of commonality, I think, across the industry generally, because most of the senior professionals in the industry on both the IAQ and the restoration side of the fence have certainly participated in a great deal of training with IAQA and RIA across the board, and many international organisations there. The biggest difference I see is related more to a regulatory and an awareness base in Australia. Our consumers here are far more protected than they are in the US or Canada, and that puts a lot of brakes on insurers and in that sort of sense. Also, our legal system is slightly different in that here, if you choose to sue someone, you're potentially liable for the person who you're suing's costs. So that tends to take away a lot of spurious cases, shall we say, or people just going hunting. So that's made quite a difference to the market there. So
okay, good. Well, I've got a follow-up question to that.
Yep.
There are standards in the United States put out by different organizations, AMC, ASTM, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Does Australia have any standards of their own for, cleaning, restoration, IAQ?
Okay, in relation to the cleaning of or the restoration, so your mold, your water damage, that sort of stuff, we have pretty much universally here, for the better part anyway, accepted the IICRC standards as being a good starting point, although there is certainly awareness of documents such as the EPA mold in schools and commercial buildings, and New York City guidelines. That sort of stuff is certainly, people are aware of that. In fact, we have one government here in Australia, which is on the west in Western Australia, who has actually referenced some of those documents, which is a good start. But in relation to standards, though, we certainly have far more standards across when you start talking into IAQ issues like lead paint removal, and they have to deal with hazardous materials, building codes. We certainly reference things like ASTM standards of moisture in concrete, that sort of stuff. So we certainly have our own standards in certain areas, but we also draw on international standards as well.
Okay. Follow-up question to that, if I might. In the United States, mold coverage was pretty much reduced in insurance policies, and many states have a limit of $5,000 or $10,000 in terms of coverage. Is mold covered in Australia, and are there any limitations in terms of finance?
Yes, generally speaking, mold is still covered in Australia. Again, that comes down to our insurers being far more regulated here and less able to put specific exclusions around a lot of things. Having said that, there are some policies that do have limitations, but I mean, the lowest of those I've heard of is 8,000. That's a very budget insurer, but the more common ones are sort of $25,000 here, so which still gives you a good, reasonable scope to do things. But most insurers generally do also recognise that a lot of the damage is actually water damage. So, they also gives you an even greater scope, so your figures are just related to the actual remediation part of the process.
Joe, any follow-ups?
I got a quick follow-up, Owen. First, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for joining us at 2 a.m. in Australia. That's above and beyond. We really appreciate it. But my follow-up is this. Although mold is covered, if the mold results from, let's say, a homeowner's lack of maintenance, they don't clean the gutters, they don't, whatever the maintenance issue may be, would it still be covered, or does it have to be a covered event?
No, it has to. We still have defined event as part of our insurance contracts here in Australia. So, yeah, pre-existing conditions would be excluded generally, and if you have quality contractors and good assessing staff involved in the process, that's usually identified and fairly early up front and put back on the building owner for some degree of contribution towards the restitution thereof or exclusion from the works. So where it's possible to do that, of course.
All right, and the next question on the list here was Australia and your contributions to restoration and the indoor air quality industry's best practices. What would you say have been some of Australia's contributions?
We've had, I know we've had quite a few people contribute to peer review of standards, but also participating in the actual writing and authoring of standards. I know at the moment we have one of my fellow Melburnians, Mr. Mehmet Yukar. He's sitting currently on the SV Council, helping to move towards the new S520 revision. Certainly many of our, we also have quite a few notable hygienists. We now actually have claimed one of your North American compatriots, Mr. Brad Prezant. He's certainly contributed on many occasions. Got some other notable people like Dr. Claire Bird, Brian Murphy, so Jeremy Stamkos. They all have contributed on the IAQA space as well.
And I want to jump in and make sure, Ross, did you have anything you wanted to add on any of the questions?
I do with that. One of the earlier questions you asked me is what we do as a council here in Australia. One of our main focuses has been training and really bringing together some of the professionals that we have worldwide within the IAQA space and the RIA space. And Claire Bird is the IAQA chairperson here in Australia, and she's very active with connecting with us through the council and working together to bring training. Best practices is a complicated word, I guess, complicated phrase, because a lot of the best practices comes through the training and feeding that training down through the ranks, down to the guys on the ground who are actually attending jobs. And so one of the main goals for us has been and will be in the next 2 years, based with Owen chairing the committee, is to work in with Claire and really start offering a lot of these courses and designations worldwide and bring them into Australia. So that's been a really important and prevalent focus, and that brings that back into best practice, is to really teach our teams and our businesses how to approach these jobs, and so, especially some of the complicated ones.
Cliff?
The reason that I brought it up is I've been thinking a lot recently about something that I'm going to term artificial intelligence. And it's different, I think, than the common definition. You know, what I mean with artificial intelligence is a lot of times people go to a training course and they come out of that training course and they're they're feeling intelligent, but they're really artificially intelligent. And what they learned in the course is what to think. They didn't learn in the course how to think. And, one of my big concerns is that there's a lot of technical information exported from, the United States and exported from other places, and people tend to, rely on it, like, for instance, IICRC standards and so on and so forth. And, people that are familiar with the industry know that there's some pretty significant flaws, in those documents, but essentially when people quote those documents, it gets perpetuated. So I really think that, your structures are a little bit different. And I think that every country really contributes, in their own way, because, I think people just need to be open-minded. And, I wanted to mention that. What about Europe? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just on that point you were just talking about there, Cliff. I think in relation to our structures and also our textiles and things like that, we have a great deal of difference to many North American methods of construction. Our buildings generally tend to be, or up until very recently, were far more open in their construction, which allowed a lot more natural air to actually come in, because we don't have a great deal of cold climate, as you would understand it to be cold. So most of Australia's habitable areas are quite temperate, and accordingly we've built along those lines. And yes, we do absolutely. We interpret those standards in line with our own construction standards, and that's a very important. I couldn't agree more. It's a very important part of rather than blindly adopting things. So.
Thank you. I guess if both you and Ross could comment on the next question, what about Europe in terms of being a provider of products and research and training and technology for your market?
We've had a company, one of our restoration guys here who's been in the industry many years, has identified the fact that a lot of the European technologies work quite well over here in Australia because of the voltage here. So, obviously we have a 240 volt system in Australia. And obviously over there I think you've got a 110 volt. So a lot of the heat drying systems that they use in Europe, we use quite successfully here. Gary from Restoration or Restore Solutions has really been working closely with the Europeans to bring a lot of those technologies into the marketplace here. And I guess one of the heat dry systems that we're using here now are becoming a part of the standard kit for the standard restorer in Australia. So we find the influence quite strong. We traditionally over many years we've been utilising the US equipment, chemicals, and technology. So this has sort of come in over the last 4 years. What are your thoughts on this, Owen? Do you want to buy in? I think we seem to be seeing a lot more of the European equipment, and the equipment's quite good, and it does actually fit within our 240 volt systems in Australia.
Yep. Thanks, Ross. I couldn't agree more. We've certainly seen quite a shift over to the use of heat as part of our drying technologies in Australia, and the Drymatic system out of the UK has been probably the largest contributor to that. We have got a reasonable amount of desiccant technology here, but not as much as you do in the US. And these units have been found to be quite useful. We're also not probably quite as subject to some of the issues that you guys have had with use of heat in buildings, and all of that, which I won't go too far into, but that's certainly been good. We also have probably the other European manufacturer that has made quite an impact in recent years has been Tramix with their concrete meters in particular. They're becoming part of a big part of the restoration landscape in Australia.
A follow-up, I guess, question for both you and Ross. You said that Drymatic, there's been a shift towards it, and I'm not necessarily that familiar with it. My question is the Drymatic system a focused system where the heat is, enclosed and focused towards what you want to dry, or is it a system that heats the entire building indiscriminately?
They have both.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say they have both. Look, initially, where we took advantage and where Gary initially worked with the European system was for timber floor drying, and that system, we were looking for some evolution into a better way to dry floors, and we have a traditionally in Australia, timber flooring or hardwood flooring is goes back a long way, and a lot of the homes were originally built with some beautiful floors and timber floors, and so there were a lot of the contractors were having troubles getting them dry. So the Drymatic system initially started to advance timber floor drying, and I guess over a period of time of having that heat drying system working, then the other benefits of heat drying started to evolve. And I guess with Drymatic's training and evolution of their gear, and especially as technology moved over the last few years, a lot of the guys now are using the heat for just day-to-day drying to speed up the process. And look, I think Restore Solutions with Gary does that very well. They obviously if you bought the kit and you're using heat dry for timber floors, then you want to be using it for other things too. So it's evolved into a standard kind of drying system here.
Thank you.
They're very useful as well with their larger system is actually more designed in a similar method to a desiccant in that it's heating the structure and exhausting the wet air out of the structure. So yeah, they have both a targeted system and a heat the whole structure or whole area type approach as well.
Okay, good. All right, I think we want to switch it over to Pete at this point.
Yeah.
Pete, in your role as conference facilitator, and we know that you work with a North American team of experts to do a roadshow, if you could just comment on how that went.
Well, one of the things that Owen chaired the planning committee, and he reached out to me, months before the conference for some ideas, and I've been sitting in on, I'm in the loop on the Australian Council stuff and have been for quite a while. And so we basically worked to put a program together with Chris Schumacher and Gary Loyban. Loyban, your original protege there, Mr. Cliff, from the old Unsmoke days. And, the folks at Legends really helped support and kind of underwrite part of the trip. And, Chris has been doing the building science training for RIA probably for about 10 years. He had already been over to Australia at least one time, maybe twice in the past. So in order to, it's very expensive to bring a lot of these North American trainers over to Australia with the travel and also in dealing with the exchanges of the currency and whatnot. So some of the local members, Owen took the lead in this with some other, RIA members. They helped share and underwrite some of the costs that didn't come directly out of the RIA budget, and we did some training in Melbourne and Brisbane before going to the conference to train the insurance adjusters, some builders, IEP type experts. In one of the classes, there was the garment guy. There were some public adjusters, things of that nature. It kind of helped the end user market. And Chris did a fabulous opening technical presentation at the conference. Gary did a presentation too on fire damage, but specifically their other role that was really great. Chris did a pre-conference, the one-day RIA building science course, which we filled the room for limits. We had close to 40 people in there, and the class was fabulous. We had several lab directors in there, PhD types. We had one lady from Singapore that came over that was on the IAQA panel. Obviously, a lot of contractor members, and a very diverse group. It was a fabulous program. Gary did a post-conference odor control, IICRC odor control class. They had about 25 in there, and that went very well too. And anyway, so that was that's kind of how you had the members working in conjunction, kind of with the association budget. So there was a win-win all around for both the conference, local members, educate the market, and be able to kind of get these multidisciplinary audiences really for the classes and for the training. So I think it went really fabulous. Basically, to wrap up, my role as the facilitator. There were two things that you kind of talked to Plain about. One was to help organize a roadshow, which would allow those extra speakers to also be on the general program. And then the other thing was to be the facilitator for the conference, kind of the sergeant at arms. I guess I kind of have a unique talent and known in the RIA circles for that. And I really enjoy doing it. If they want to invite me back next year, I'd certainly be pleased to do that again, kind of make this annual trip over to Australia where I can handle the business part and also visit with all the friends I've kind of developed there over the years. So anyway, that's the deal on that.
Pete, I guess as a follow-up to that, can you comment on other industry dignitaries that happened to be there that weren't native Australians?
Yeah. So what's happened is there were several. We got the event got really wide range support from a lot of the industries. Besides the IAQA connection, obviously, kind of partnering in the educational part of the program. The lady who heads up the ISSA, was there. The local press was there for MinClean, but the IICRC had a really, had a role in the conference, and their leadership, Pete Dickinson and Craig Kirschmeyer, Steve Miranda, the executive committee people, and Richard Green, their executive director, came over. They obviously had a booth in the conference hall, and in part two, Ross will talk a little bit about the unique way how they had how they set the conference up between education and then the little vendor presentation. It was really very unique, I think, and very successful. But starting last year, when we did the transition RIA, one of the ideas that we kind of came up with was the RIA, procedure of where we recognize all our advanced designations like we do at our annual convention. The Aussies wanted to do that there, which we did. And the idea was brought up that there's so many IICRC people over there that they do that for their master, designates, whether it's the restorers, the cleaners, the different ones that they have. And so they got some stage time at some podium to do that, to kind of give a plaque. So I thought that was a very collaborative, very well done. And there was a lot of just fruitful conversations that took place, between the leadership, between the council and the RIA leadership, to just, how can the organization work together for the greater good of the industry? So anyway, I thought that was, a good little kind of cherry on the top of the cake for the event.
Good. All right, Joe, what do you think? Halftime?
Yeah, let's go to halftime. When we come back, we've got part two. We'll get Chuck back in here a little bit more, and we'll talk to Pete a little bit more and kind of go a little more general on the industry in general. Let's break for halftime. We'll be right back with our guests.
IAQ Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com. Gold sponsors are Particles Plus Engineers and Manufacturers of feature-rich particle counters and air quality monitoring instrumentation. Learn more at particlesplus.com. Count on us. Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions available at healthyindoors.com. And AEML Laboratories, free FedEx shipping, great pricing, same-day results, and never a rush fee. Learn more at AEMLinc.com. Association sponsors are the Indoor Air Quality Association, a multidisciplinary organization dedicated to promoting the exchange of indoor environmental information through education and research. Learn more at IAQA.org. And RIA, the Restoration Industry Association, the granddaddy of the restoration industry. Network with leaders. Learn more at restorationindustry.org.
All right, let's get back to the second half. Pete, I want to bring you in. There were apparently 3 panels that hit a chord with the audience, and I wonder if you could tell listeners and maybe give them a couple key feedback points from those panels.
Yeah. So let me kind of give a little quick thing on that, and you jump over to Chuck, because Chuck did a great I kind of called it a keynote. He actually had 1 hour on the program, and most of the other speakers had shorter time. He did a fabulous job, so he'll weigh in on that. So listen, there were 3 panels that we had. One of them, I facilitated, obviously, the whole event, Master Ceremony. But one panel in particular, I was actually the moderator for, which is a different role than the facilitator. And that was kind of a kind of industry perspective, state of the restoration industry and Oz panel. And it seems that, I kind of turned it to, we had the Melbourne Mafia on there. We had Oliver Treadfall from, who's the CEO of Somatic. They're kind of the largest, probably restoration, privately owned kind of network over there. We had Mehmet Ukar, that Owen Riek mentioned, that serves on the S520 committee, and then David Quinn, who's also has a restoration company in Melbourne, and then also has a national kind of TPA type of network called FIN. I think it's the flood industry network or something of that nature. And so we kind of addressed really the hard-hitting issues. And what we kind of found that came out of that is they have all the same issues that we have in North America and the UK, dealing with the carriers, dealing with the scope, dealing with agreeing on standards, different levels of certification, pricing issues, lowering margins, the TPAs. But they had some really very unique kind of approaches, and they have how to address it. I also think that the market is evolving there, where the UK market has a very distinct difference between the builders and the restoration industry. Canada, they're pretty much all full service, and the US is multi-models. I think that's how Australia, over the next few years, will determine how that market's going to ferret out. I tend to think it's probably going to follow a little bit more of the U.S. model, but I think time will tell as builders and others are in there. The other 2 panels, the IAQA panel was great. Claire Bird headed that up as the chair. She had Brad Fazant, both of those, Jeremy Stankos, there's Chin Peng, I hope I didn't get a name wrong, who was the PhD lady who did a fabulous case study as a separate presentation from Singapore. And they addressed a lot of the issues around mold and sampling and all the traditional stuff with audience interaction. I thought that was terrific. Now, those 2 particular panels, I am going to kind of facilitate over the next couple of months an article in CNR magazine to get all the key points out. Well, one of the things we try to do in the magazine is, every month, every other month, kind of get something from the international audience. So we had a lot of stuff that came out of the conference to probably give us some content that kind of can kind of go for the rest of the year. And the third panel that I thought was interesting was headed up by Scotty McFadden, well known in the IICRC circles. He's also a RIAWS, and he had a panel with somebody from the insurance company, and Kagoff, longtime RA member, who's kind of a specialty drying contractor in North Queensland. And they talked about the flood response that they had, kind of similar to the U.S. CAT response you guys that the show covered last year, how they responded, how they networked as contractors, working with the insurance thing and all that. I think Scotty did a great job of putting that. So those 3 panels were really fabulous, and I think there was a lot of good content and a lot of information that was kind of gleaned for the members.
Pete, as one follow-up to what you said, in the United States, at RIA events and other events, we always have to be careful with governmental regulations, monopolies, and so on and so forth. Do you have to be as careful in Australia, at your events? Can you publicly say what you think and feel and mean and so on and so forth, or they got to temper it?
Yeah. Right. So let me comment on that, and then later on, when you go back to Ross and Owen, if they want to make a comment, that'll be fine. Look, For one thing, the council operates under the auspices of RIA. And RIA has an antitrust policy, professional decorum policy, issues dealing around copyrights and all that kind of stuff. We open the conference with that, and we enforce that policy through all RIA events globally, no matter where they are. Now, having said that, and that policy talks about not only U.S. law, but international provincial law, like in Canada, et cetera. Having said that, there are some laws in Australia, and there are actually some in Canada that allows them to do some things differently than we can do in the U.S., but we don't go down that rabbit hole, and we're very careful. And the reason that we don't is it gets very contentious, and I think one of the points of having enforcing a good antitrust policy and rules of decorum, it allows for good order in a much better flowing conference where people can speak openly. We prohibited having any recordings and people taking pictures, and that kind of a thing, so that things all of a sudden are taken out of context. They're not on YouTube, they're not on Twitter and stuff like that, and it allows for an open or free-flowing thing. So that's it. But are there some different in the law? Yeah, there's a few, but I don't think they're that significant, and I don't really think that they really affected the conference. But thanks for the follow-up. Good question.
Hey, Cliff, let me jump over to Chuck. Chuck, you've got, you help business owners with managing their business and so on. I got a two-part question. The first part is, one of your three key accomplishments you were trying to help RIA continue to strive toward was to become an international association. And I'm not a restoration guy. I follow the restoration industry. I do a little bit with it, but I'm more of an IAQ guy. And it seems to me like Australia is kind of the main international group that RIA and others get buy-in from and oftentimes travel to and have conferences at. And I'm wondering, Pete mentioned the UK a few times. I'm just curious, how's it been going with getting more buy-in from groups like the UK or maybe the Asian countries or the European countries? And if you're not getting that buy-in, why do you think that is?
That's a great question, Joe. There's a lot of facets to it. In the first place, not only is it the UK, but I don't want to forget the Canadian market, which isn't part of the international market.
Great point.
And so we have a great representation in Canada, an active group up there, as well as Australia. And Pete has done a lot to open the door in the UK. I know that last year we were invited to participate in their event. Unfortunately, none of us were able to make it over. In the future, though, I'd like to do that. The reason that was important to me while I was president, I think it's important to bring a broader perspective to restoration sciences than what we simply see in the U.S. And I think by expanding or by including more countries, we're going to have that, and I think it will make the entire industry stronger.
All right, and let's go to part two. With that, if we don't make money, we're not going to be able to help the industry. We're not going to be parts of associations, and things will just dry up. So, if you could tell listeners a little bit about your presentation and give them a few tips, key points on tuning up their business.
Happy to. First of all, every time I've presented to an Australian audience, they've always been very gracious and very accepting of what I'm offering to them. And this was no exception. So it makes it really enjoyable and fun for me as a presenter. And they were great. The presentation I gave is called The 5 Steps of Growing a Small Business. And essentially what it does, Joe, it takes a business from startup through multi-million dollars in revenue. Because the audience was made up of a vast range of size companies, I wanted to touch on all of those and show them the key issues that they need to be addressing at each of the different stages of the business. These are all predictable. I didn't make this stuff up. This is just in business. The key challenges that they have, where they should be utilizing their time, what the objectives are at each stage, what skills they need to be developing, which is different when you're a startup or even a $1 million company than they are when you're a $2 or $5 million company. We grow businesses, restoration contractors grow their businesses. And at the outset, we focus on technical skills, which you have to. As the business grows, that shifts. And now we need to be dealing with management and leadership issues in order to continue to scale the business. And so that's what the presentation was about. It also had org charts for different size companies, just as a visual to help people better understand and model their companies.
Chuck, I remember going to one of your events, and you had like three areas that an individual should focus on if they wanted to help to grow their business, make their business more profitable, etc. I don't remember what they were, and maybe you're not. Can you go over that for us with listeners?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking, Joe. That's fundamental. We call that our sustained profitable growth model. And that's fundamental to the work that we do at Violand Management. It's a Venn diagram, and it's we refer to them as dynamics, 3 circles that intersect. The bottom right one is the business dynamic, which is where we measure things. That's the tangible things in our businesses. The one on the left-hand side at the bottom is the people dynamic. That's all the people involved in growing the business. And then the top one is the executive dynamic. And that's the executive who drives this whole thing. All of those dynamics are constantly in flux, but they're all self-leveling. So at some point, if one outgrows the other, either the other two have to grow or the one has to shrink. And so the job, the task of the owner is to try to grow them in some form of similarity.
So you want to try and bring those all up at the same time. And which of the 3 do you find business owners are most often kind of letting go a little bit, not really putting as much effort as they should be?
It's always the same one, Joe. It's always the top one, the executive.
Yep.
The business will grow at the rate the owner grows. Bottom line.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Great advice for our listeners. Let's go over to Ross. I mean, we're running a little tight on time, and we've got a list of questions about the event. I want to go back, Ross, to the first question I asked Chuck. How did you tie in the international stage? You know, how many countries were represented? How did you get them there? And you know, it's a little expensive to get to Australia, but you seem to be able to get people to attend these events. Tell listeners a little bit about the international stage.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Look, Australia, we rely on our international family, I guess we call them. You know, over here we have a lot of suppliers from the US and, as we mentioned earlier, UK. We're starting to get a lot of interest from Asia. Obviously, a lot of our gear is manufactured in Asia. So, you know, organically, we've got people coming here regularly and being a part of our community because we rely so much on our imported equipment and technologies. Now, our wages are very high in Australia. Manufacturing here has slowed down over many years. So, you know, our whole industry is really based on our international market. So it was quite easy to get our internationals over here, and actually a lot of our conference was designed specifically to educate the RIA members and the attendees as to what's available, what can they use in their businesses to really, when they walk away from the conference, you know, take something away. And I think our international suppliers and guests really helped us with that and understand that. So there's a lot of business here, which is inviting. So, yeah, and of course it was a nice venue, nice area, good holiday destination. We try to put these events on in areas where, you know, if you want to come, do some business, but, you know, also have a holiday and enjoy. I think Chuck enjoyed some time here on Hamilton Island with his lovely wife, Karen. And
we did.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot to have out here and a lot to enjoy.
How many people attended the show and the convention? And can you give us an estimate on how many were from Australia and how many were from other parts of the world?
look, we around about 200 we had attend. We had some visitors and guests. I guess majority of the attendees were from Australia, and that was a fantastic thing to see. I mean, you know, we saw a lot of people there that I call them the old boys in the industry who, you know, you traditionally don't see at a lot of the events. You know, they generally send their staff or their managers. You know, the old boys were there, and I think it was good to see that, because that I truly believe the international influence is a part of that. Because the old boys were the leaders in really connecting us with the US and UK. And we saw them at the conference, which was great. You know, I think that with the amount of attendees we had and our guests, and the event was an absolute success, and we were all very happy to be there.
At this point in the show, we typically go to a roundup. Unfortunately, John just let me know we don't have the music for the roundup, so I'm going to kind of giddy up, go round up myself here, and we're going to bring everybody in for the final question. Cliff, why don't I start it off with you, let you go ahead and start the final questioning. And I think we've got Lee on, and Chris. Lee King and Chris Bunchek are both going to join us. Why don't we, Cliff?
Well, Joe, before we do that, I think there's still a couple of things that would be important to cover. I think one question for Owen first is, what steps are being taken to make 2019 bigger and better?
Thanks there, Cliff. I think 2018 was our first go at running a conference down here in Australia, and in any sort of large scale capacity. But we learned a lot from that exercise, and we're certainly working on bringing some fantastic, once again, fantastic international speakers. We've got a lot more participation planned for next year with IAQA. They're going to have their own, going to run a specific IAQA day, whereas they were just a part of the program this year. So that'll give a bigger forum to IAQ issues in their industry, and I think we got a lot of positive comment, and I think we'll find our numbers will only continue to grow, both nationally and internationally. We had a lot of representation from both. We had some representation from Singapore, but also from our brothers in New Zealand, who certainly came over in reasonable numbers, and I expect to see that continue in coming years.
All right, we got to go to Pete. Pete, industry service is important to organizations. Tell us about the special award presentation that was made at the event.
Yeah. So, Cliff, before I do that, very quickly, I'd like to tag in off of some of those questions that Joe was talking with Ross about, which I think are important. And he talked about the international, who else? He didn't mention Canada. And there were three international suppliers that went over there to the event. One was the AML Labs, and mold is a big issue over there. Traveled over there. I think there was a lot of interest in all the lab activity. But the other one was Encircle. I think they've been over there before. Chris Riznowski from Encircle did a fabulous presentation on the convention. And in talking with the Encircle folks, they also were kind of visiting with some of the insurers and the carriers over there, and got some stuff kind of going on there that may lead to developments in software and platforms and stuff. So I think that is pretty important, the fact that you get North Americans that would travel over there and looking for business opportunities, kind of like Ross said, there's some business to be had. So anyway, I thought that was an important point to tag off that put into the blog. Now, let's kind of move to this final thing here, and I imagine you're going to go into the roundup. So the planning committee wanted to follow some of the traditional RIA traditions. I talked earlier about how we recognize the induction ceremony every year at the annual convention. They wanted to recognize the RIA advanced certification people over there. There was, I think we probably had 8 or 10 of them that went on the stage, and there's others who were kind of in the pipeline that will probably maybe be inducted next year, either in Oz or in our U.S. convention, or possibly both. And then, of course, the other the big major award every year at RIA is the Martin L. King Award. And it's not really identified as a lifetime achievement award, although most of the guys that get it over the years, there's been all kinds of innovators and different people that have gotten the award, certainly during, Martin's heyday and before his death. So the committee decided and developed what they want to call the Australasian Lifetime Achievement Award. And they wanted me to kind of oversee that during their conference dinner, which had a kind of a beach theme. We were supposed to be outside for it on the beach, but the weather wasn't good, so we did it inside. But everybody wore shorts, and they had all beach paraphernalia there, so it was really fantastic. And anyway, the entire committee decided that they wanted to give this to Duncan Bennett, who's been mentioned, long-term advocate in the region, and they wanted me to handle it. And so we kind of modeled the activities after the Martin L. King Award, but it's the lifetime achievement in the Australasian market. And the thing that surprised the heck out of me is the entire council knew Duncan was going to get it, and they didn't leak. It was no leak. I mean, the surprise, no one knew outside of the councils and myself and, of course, RIA staff. Chris Munchak did the plaque. He brought the plaque over on the plane, gave it to me. Anyway, it was unbelievable. The people that were in the room will never forget that. Early on, I think Duncan knew it was him. And, after I called him to the stage, and Ashley, Ross, and Duncan, and Owen were there to greet him and take the formal presentation, we thought he was, and the emotion was so sincere, it was unbelievable. Eventually, he collected his emotions, and once he got to the podium, he was a pure Duncan, and it was really great. He recognized and acknowledged Marty and all the stuff they did, and then we had a lot of fun. We took quite a few pictures. There'll be a whole write-up in the CNR magazine that'll be coming out next month, and along with the general write-up on the conference, it's going to be the cover story. Ross took the lead on that. But anyway, that was fabulous, and I think they want to kind of continue with these RIA traditions, but maybe with a little bit of a Australasian kind of twist to it. Anyway, so that was fantastic. Anyway, guys, I think this probably concludes part 2, and I'll turn it back over to you guys for the roundup.
Okay, Joe.
Let's go to the roundup. We got the music.
Hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, let 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide.
Okay, Cliff, why don't you take the first one?
Okay. If I have the first one, it's really a selfish question from my perspective and Joe's. Can you tell us what speakers or panelists from your event should be future guests on IAQ Radio?
Good one.
Hey, Chris, who are you asking that question of? Is that a toss-up?
That's a toss-up. We're looking.
I got 2 right here, and they're mentioned already on the show. The 2 people who I think should be on the show would be fabulous guests. One is going to be Oliver Trevfall, who's the CEO of Stamatic Australia. He travels all over the world. The whole Stamatic here in the U.S. had their 50th anniversary big blowout convention just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and a lot of the Stamatic members that were at the conference with Oliver all traveled over for that. And so he's got an unbelievable international perspective besides out of Australia. I think Oliver would make a fabulous guest. The other guy is Brad Prezant. I think that, Brad, I've known Brad into the 90s, and Cliff, I think you'll remember him and probably knew him from our days when we used to work with Merck. And he hosted one of the Cleaning for Health symposiums that I facilitated with Sue Smith and the Merck people on the West Coast in Seattle, Gene Cole, and a lot of the usual suspects. And very well known in the AIHA circles. And then he sold his business, wrapped it up, and he basically moved to New Zealand, and a few years back moved to Australia. He's been over there for several years. He actually is in the U.S. right now. I actually talked to him a few days ago. He was up in Maine doing some stuff, and I think he's traveling back out in a couple of weeks. He's got an unbelievable international handle, too, based on his experience. Those 2 guys, in my mind, are almost absolute guys that we should run down and should be guests on there. So, you want the Watchdog's help in that, just let me know, and I'll follow up on that. But anyway, throw it back to the rest of the panel. Any other thoughts they have, because we have a lot of great talent.
I think we had a really good speaker, Jeremy Stankos, Actually, Owen probably knows more about Jeremy, but I was very impressed with his take on hazards in the industry, and when really hands-on information on. I mean, did you know there was asbestos in toothbrushes? Did you know that? I thought it was really interesting. You know, he had some good stuff there. So I think he would be a good contributor. What do you think, Owen?
I think Jeremy would be very good. He's also got a very strong HVAC background as well, and I think that he would certainly have some be an interesting contributor to the discussion.
Yeah, he's been an ASHRAE member for a long time, so I think he'd probably fit really good, guys, with your with kind of the IAQ segment of your listenership.
Thanks.
Cliff, maybe this would be a good time to bring in Lee King, if he's on the line, current president of RIA. Lee, do we have you?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. Welcome to IAQ Radio. I just wondered if you had any final thoughts for listeners. And I don't know, did you go over for this event?
I did not go this past year. I'm planning on going in 2019. And we just really, as an association, appreciate Owen and Chris and Duncan and Ross and Ashley and that whole group. And just the event turned out to be a great success, and we've heard nothing but rave reviews about it. And we look forward to it in the future, and just really excited about it.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the first? I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the whole show or not.
I did. One thing I did want to comment on, and it was a comment that Cliff made earlier about how you attend a lot of the classes and the courses, and most of them are technically oriented, and Chuck even touched on this, but you attend the classes and you come out knowing what to do, but you don't really come out learning, how to think about the problem and how to really convert that into bottom line dollars for your business or for the business that you work for. And that is really an important observation. And I would give RIA a kind of a toot on their horn that so critical that some of these conferences that we sponsor and the conventions and the various smaller conferences, you really do learn these things by associating with them within the RIA, and you meet other business owners and you meet industry icons and you meet people that have encountered the problems that you face, and that's where you learn how to think about these issues and how to convert those technical skills that you learn into dollars for your company. And so it's a great observation, and we want to encourage people to join RIA for that reason.
Network with leaders, Lee. Thank you for joining us. We got Chris Munchak on as well. Chris, are you still on the line? Oh, maybe we lost Chris. All right. Well, let's go around the horn, gentlemen.
Hey, Joe, Chris may have been on mute, and maybe he's trying to unmute. Give him another shout out and see if Chris is on there.
Well, actually, I just see his camera right now, or maybe we haven't muted the last one down, Joe. Oh, he was going to call in on the phone. Well, all right. Well, if he's there, Chris, if you're there, give us a holler. Jump in at any point. Let's go around the horn real quick for final thoughts. Let's start with Chuck.
Guys, I just want to thank you again for inviting me to be on here, and it's always great seeing my buds down in Australia, Owen and Ross here. So it was great seeing you guys, and always great being part of the program. Thanks.
Always appreciate having you, Chuck. Ross, any final thoughts?
Yeah, look, I was going to say, I'd love to say it's a lovely, warm, sunny day outside, and I'm bright and wide awake in the middle of the day, but 2 a.m. here. It's always a pleasure to get up in the middle of the night, come and see our RIA family and our friends, and we love you down here. So thanks for having us.
Well, and thank you for getting up and hanging in there with us for a little over an hour here. Owen, final thoughts?
I'd like to echo Chuck's thoughts. Thank you very much for having us on and supporting RIA with our conference endeavours down here. And you've got quite a healthy fan base in Australia, so lots of regular listeners part of the world. So, how you doing, guys?
We do appreciate the fan base in Australia. Listeners, I love it. And you guys mentioned Brad Prezant. We have had him on, but it's probably been 8 years. We've been doing this for 11 years now, and he's a co-editor of the AIHA Green Book on recognition, evaluation, and control of indoor mold. He did a great job, but you are right. It's well past time that we brought him back, so we'll definitely do that. And let's wrap it up with Pete Consigli. Pete, final thoughts before we call it a day.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that I think needs to be said, and Cliff, it needs to be in the blog, and I can't believe that between Owen and Ross, neither one of them brought it up. So, guys, I'm going to save your collective butts. We need to give a huge shout-out to Ashley Easterby, his daughter, Natasha, who goes by Tash, and her cohort, Tamika. Can't remember Tamika's last name, but Tamika, I think, used to work for Owen and Chris down there in Melbourne. So one of Ashley's companies that he has, he's got a company that basically handles kind of event handling and things of that, and he oversees and is the agent for RIA to handle a lot of the organizations locally and work in conjunction with the Smith-Buckland staff in Chicago. And basically Tash and Tamika do all the heavy lifting, all the organizing. And let me tell you, those two ladies and Ashley and that whole little group through his Novas company, it did just a fabulous job. I mean, they were flawless in attention to detail, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, all the arrangements for the event to basically run smoothly. And without having that level of support, Ashley was on the planning committee, obviously, with Ross and Owen, and then it worked. And like I say, the two ladies worked in conjunction with the RIA staff and the staff, the international liaisons in Chris's office in Chicago, and they were fabulous. So I think they really do need to be recognized. But other than that, there really isn't much more to say. I think it was a terrific show, Cliff, Joe. I thank obviously my Aussie mates and my long-term friend, Mr. Viola, there. Appreciate Lee King taking the time to call in. It's a little unfortunate unless Chris happens to call in. They didn't get to weigh
Chris
in, but hopefully
now. We do have Chris. So Chris,
you know what? I'm turn it over. I'm going to let Mr. Munchak have the final word of the roundup before you close the show out, guys. So
I think that might be the first time in the history that Pete's letting somebody else have the last word. That's an honor.
I was stalling Chris, so hoping you were going to call in, my friend.
Well, I've been here the whole time. I just think that my phone number was muted. I don't think they knew who I was. So here I am.
We had a little mix-up here. But Chris, welcome, and thanks for your support of IAQ Radio. And any final thoughts on today's show?
No, I echo what's been said before. I think the thing from my perspective in working with our team is just the incredible work that the volunteers pulled off in Australia to make that event such a success. I mean, there's the entire Australasian Council, really with very little support from anyone else, really single-handedly pulled that off. And it was a huge opportunity for RIA to really, show everyone in that part of the world that the association could be trusted with, the show for the industry there. And I think it opened a lot of eyes. And I think, Owen and Ross, you guys will probably agree that we saw some faces there that we haven't seen in a while at events, and I think it was largely because the association had taken over ownership for running that event, and it really belongs in the hands of an association and volunteers, running that event. So just really incredibly proud of the group and couldn't be happier at how it turned out.
Well said, and a great way to finish things up. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Cliff, any final thoughts from you before we close out the day?
Nope, Joe, I'm good.
All right, well, this is Radio Joe Hughes saying thanks to Chuck Violand. We had Ross Riek. We had Owen Boak, Pete Consigli, of course, the Restoration Industries Global Watchdog, Chris Munchak, who else? Lee King. Thank you all for joining us. John Faith at the controls. Well done. It was a little hectic, but we got her done. John, you got to have faith. Also, want to thank our growing group of loyal listeners out there. By the way, it's that time. Cliff and I are going to take our little summer vacation here. We'll be taking a 3 weeks off, but I will be in touch with listeners on a regular basis during that 3-week period. We will be back in mid-August with the next episode of IAQ Radio.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.